Chosen one, there is something I need to tell you. Not something general, not something meant for everyone who stumbles across this video. Something specific, something that has been waiting for this exact moment to be spoken. You have been living under a silence that has confused you. Not the silence of an empty room, the silence of heaven. That particular kind of quiet that feels like distance, like your prayers are going somewhere, but you cannot tell where, and nothing is coming back. That silence has a name, and tonight I am going to tell you what it is, because when you understand what the silence actually was, everything you have been through will look completely different. I want you to stay with me through this entire message, not because I am going to threaten what happens if you leave, but because what I am about to unfold is layered, and each layer only makes sense once the one before it is understood. By the time this message is finished, the silence will no longer feel like abandonment. It will feel like the most intentional thing that has ever been done on your behalf. Let us begin. There was a moment, and you may not be able to pinpoint exactly when it was, when something in your life went quiet. Not just externally, internally. That part of you that used to feel certain about where you were going started to become uncertain. The confidence that once came easily began to require effort to maintain. The prayers that used to feel like two-way conversations started to feel like monologues delivered into a room you were no longer sure was occupied. And you adapted because you are someone who adapts. You kept going. You kept showing up. You kept believing, even when believing was hard. But privately, in the part of you that you rarely show anyone, a question was forming, not a question you were proud of. Not a question you would say out loud in the wrong company, but the question was there. Is something wrong with me? Because everything around you seemed to be moving. Other people's lives were producing fruit. Other people's prayers seemed to be landing somewhere. Other people's doors were opening, and you were here, working just as hard, believing just as sincerely, waiting, always waiting. I need to tell you something about that waiting. It was not what you thought it was. You interpreted it as God being silent. But God was not silent. God was building. And what he was building was not small enough to be built quickly. What he was building required a foundation that could only be laid through the exact seasons you were living in. Let me explain what I mean by foundation, because I think this word gets used in spiritual conversations without people fully understanding what it describes. In construction, there is a phase that looks like nothing is happening. You pass a building site every day. The ground is cleared, the machines are there, the workers are moving. But from the outside, to the eye that does not understand construction, it looks like nothing is being built. Because the most important work is underground, foundations are invisible. The deeper the building needs to go, the longer the foundation phase takes. And the longer the foundation phase takes, the more frustrating it is for the person who does not know what is being built. You have been in the foundation phase. You have watched other people build quickly walls, going up, visible progress, measurable growth, while your site looked like excavation. But excavation is not failure. Excavation is preparation for something that requires deep roots. Shallow roots produce fast fruit, and fast fruit falls fast. What is being built in your life was never meant to fall. So the roots had to go deeper than felt comfortable, deeper than felt reasonable, deeper than the patience of anyone watching from outside your life, but the depth is almost finished. And what is built on a deep foundation does not shake when everything around it shakes. That is what was being prepared for you. Not a structure that looks impressive immediately, but collapses under the weight of what life brings. A structure that can carry what is coming. The weight of the calling, the weight of the assignment, the weight of the people who will lean against it in their own hard seasons. The foundation was built for all of that, and the foundation is ready. Now let me tell you what else was happening during that time. Because the foundation is only part of the story, while heaven was building in your life, there was also a campaign being run against you, and I do not use that word lightly. What you experienced was not random difficulty. It was a campaign, strategic, coordinated, intentional, designed to do one thing: make you stop before the foundation was finished. Because the enemy is not afraid of people who are struggling. He is afraid of people who are struggling and still refuse to quit. A person who quits halfway through the foundation phase ends up with a hole in the ground and no building. All that excavation wasted. All that preparation abandoned. That was the goal. So the pressure was applied to the place where you were most likely to break. For some people, that is finances. When money is under constant threat, the mind has no room for anything else. Survival thinking takes over. Vision shrinks. Faith becomes harder to sustain. And the spiritual work, the building happening underground, gets drowned out by the noise of the immediate crisis. You pray less because you are tired from managing the emergency. You plan less because the horizon keeps collapsing. You dream less because dreaming feels like a luxury you cannot afford when the present is this heavy. That is not weakness. That is what sustained financial pressure does to a human mind. It was designed to do exactly that. For others, the pressure is relational. The people who were supposed to stand with you left, or they stayed but changed, or they turned and became the very source of the wound they were supposed to help heal. And isolation has a particular cruelty. Because in isolation you only hear one voice clearly, the one inside your own head. And when that voice has been under pressure long enough, it starts to tell you things that are not true. It tells you that you are the problem. It tells you that other people figured something out that you missed. It tells you that the promises you believed in were naivete. I need to say this clearly. That is not your voice telling you those things. That is the pressure talking. Those thoughts are not a diagnosis. They are a symptom of a targeted attack on the part of you that was supposed to sustain your faith through the foundation phase. For others, the attack was more intimate. It came for the body. It came for the mind. Unexplained symptoms, persistent anxiety, a heaviness that medication and willpower both failed to fully lift. A fatigue that went deeper than sleep could reach. And here is the cruelty of attacking the body and mind when you are physically depleted and mentally exhausted. Even prayer feels like effort you do not have the energy for. The very thing that would strengthen you becomes hard to access when you are most weakened. That is not an accident. That is strategy. The reason I am explaining this to you is not to rehearse your pain. It is so you understand something critical. The intensity of the opposition you faced was proportional to the significance of what was being built in you. You do not run a sustained, multi-front, coordinated campaign against someone who poses no threat. That level of spiritual opposition is reserved for people whose potential the enemy assessed and decided, I cannot let this person reach their full assignment. So when you look back at the hardship, and I know it has been hard, harder than most people around, look at it with this lens. The very intensity of what came against you is the most honest testimony to what you carry. The enemy does not miscalculate. If he assessed you worthy of that kind of opposition, then what you carry is exactly as significant as you have always quietly suspected and secretly hoped. Now I need to tell you about what was happening on the other side of the silence, because the silence from your end did not mean silence on heaven's end. There is a passage in the book of Daniel, one of those passages that most people read past, because it looks like a logistical detail that describes something that maps directly onto what happened in your life. Daniel had been praying for 21 days, and on the 21st day, an angel appeared and said something remarkable. He said, "Your prayer was heard on the first day, not the 21st day, the first day." So the question becomes, what happened in between? The angel explained. He had been sent in response to that first prayer. But there was a battle in the heavenly realm that delayed the delivery. The answer was coming. The answer had always been coming, but the delivery was contested, and Daniel on earth, in natural time, experienced that contest as silence, as unanswered prayer, as heaven not responding, when in reality there was a war being fought on his behalf in a dimension he could not see. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because this is not an abstract theological point. This is a description of what your life has looked like from the inside of heaven's perspective. Every time you prayed and heard nothing, every time you waited and nothing moved, every time you said the same prayer again with a faith that was wearing thin at the edges, there was an answer already in transit, already sent, already on the way, being fought for in a realm you had no access to. The silence on your end was the sound of a battle on heaven's end. And battle's end, the 21 days ended for Daniel. The angel arrived. The answer was delivered, not because Daniel became more worthy between day 1 and day 21, not because his prayer improved, not because he did something on earth that changed what was happening in heaven. The answer arrived when the battle was resolved, when the contest that was happening on his behalf came to its conclusion. And the conclusion, when it came suddenly. Daniel was not warned. He did not receive advance notice. He was going about his life, and then the angel was there. This is how your answer is coming. Not with a long build-up that gives you time to prepare yourself emotionally. Not with a gradual shift that allows the transition to happen slowly, with a suddenness that reflects the resolution of something that had been contested. The battle is ending. The answer is arriving, and it is coming suddenly. I want you to understand something I feel strongly about tonight. How many times did you feel like your prayers were going nowhere, when in reality there was a war being fought on your behalf in a dimension you could not see? How many times did heaven's silence on your end mean heaven's most intense activity on your behalf? The silence was not indifference, it was conflict. And conflict, by definition, has a resolution. The conflict over your life is resolving in your favor. I will tell you how I know, because you are still here. If the opposing force had won fully, finally, you would not be here. You would have stopped. You would have given up the faith, the prayer, the believing. You would have settled into a life of managed disappointment and called it acceptance. You would have packed away the things you once believed for and told yourself a story about why it was okay that they did not happen. But something in you kept refusing to fully give up. And that refusal, that stubborn, sometimes barely conscious refusal to stop, was not just willpower. It was God preserving in you the faith necessary to receive what is coming. He was keeping the candle lit, not burning brightly, some days barely a flicker, but lit because a candle that is still lit can start a fire. And what is coming in your life is not a quiet resolution to a quiet season. What is coming has the capacity to start a fire. But before I describe what is coming, I want to speak about something that rarely gets addressed in messages like this: the grief of the long season. Not just the difficulty of it, the grief, There is a specific kind of grief that accumulates in a person who has been faithful for a long time without visible return. It is not the grief of losing something. It is the grief of not yet having something that you have believed in long enough for the believing itself to become exhausting. The grief of carrying a promise that has not yet arrived. And if you have been carrying that kind of grief, if you have been doing the spiritual work of maintaining hope while privately mourning the gap between what was promised and what is visible, I want to say something to you directly. That grief is not a sign of weak faith. That grief is the natural result of caring deeply about something that matters. You do not grieve what you do not value. You do not ache for what you were indifferent to. The depth of the grief is a measurement of the depth of the desire, and the depth of the desire is a measurement of the depth of the calling. You would not have been given a desire of that magnitude for something you were never going to receive. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Not create new desires in your heart that are foreign to who you are. Give you the desires that are already in your heart. The desire was placed there first. The fulfillment follows, and the gap between the placing and the fulfilling is what looked like delay and felt like grief. The grief is ending, not because the desire is being removed, because the fulfillment is arriving. Now, let me tell you about something happening right now in the Spirit. There is a passage in Luke 15 about a father who watched for his returning son. The text says the father saw the son coming while the son was still a great way off, which means the father had been looking every day, looking in the direction his son had gone, not with resignation, with expectation. And when the son was still far away, not close, not almost there, still a great way off, the father ran. He did not wait for the son to arrive at the gate. He did not stand at the door and receive him. He ran before the arrival was complete. I want you to understand what that image means for your life right now. You have been walking toward something, toward the fulfillment, toward the answered prayer, toward the season you have been believing for, and you are still a great way off from what it looks like fully realized. But the Father has been watching the direction you are coming from, and he sees you, not the finished version, not the arrived version, the still coming version, and he is not standing at a distance, waiting for you to make it all the way. He is moving toward you. What you will experience in this season, the provision, the open doors, the divine connections, will often arrive before you feel like you are ready for it, before you feel close enough, before you have figured out the logistics, because the Father is running, not waiting for your arrival to be complete, running to meet you where you currently are. Now, let me speak about what you have been carrying that you were never supposed to carry alone. There are people in your life, and people who will enter your life in this next season, who are in the middle of their own silent period, their own foundation phase, their own 21 days. And they need something from you that cannot be manufactured and cannot be faked. They need someone who has been in the dark and can honestly say to someone else who is in the dark, I know where you are. I have been there. And I can tell you from the other side of it there is another side. Not as a performance, not as a motivational message, as a testimony, as proof. The authority to say that comes only from having lived it. And you have lived it. Isaiah 61 speaks of people who received beauty for ashes and became oaks of righteousness. Oaks, not flowers, not decorative plants that add color for a season. Trees with root systems that run deep enough to provide shade for others. Trees that do not bend when the wind comes. Trees that are still standing when the storm passes. What you have been through was not decorating you. It was rooting you, making you into someone who does not blow over when the people around you are in their storm, someone they can lean against and find solid. That is the calling embedded in the suffering, not to perform your testimony on a stage, though that may come, but to be present with the right person at the right moment and offer something you could not have offered before all of this. The presence of someone who understands, the hope of someone who came through, the authority of someone who believed when it was hard and now stands as proof that it was worth it. This is who you are becoming, and the becoming is almost complete. I want to speak now about what is on the other side of the silence, because I was shown something about the season you are entering, and I want to describe it carefully. The season you are entering is a season of suddenness, not gradual, not incremental, sudden, like the earthquake in Paul and Silas's prison, which did not come with warning and did not arrive in stages. What is coming for your life is going to arrive with a speed that does not match the pace of the season you just left. This is by design. When God compresses time, when He accelerates what He has been building, it is always to compensate for the length of the preparation. What took years to prepare does not have to take years to deliver. The delivery can be sudden even when the preparation was long. And within the next season, in ways that I believe you will be able to trace back to this moment, you will begin to see things move that have not moved for a long time. A door that has been closed will open, not creak open, open. A provision will arrive from a direction you were not looking. Not a small provision. A provision that visibly exceeds what your own effort produced. A connection will be made, a person, a conversation, a collaboration that you will recognize immediately as placed, not engineered, not networked, placed by a hand that was operating on your behalf before you even knew what you needed. These are not promises I am making. These are descriptions of what heaven released when the foundation was complete and the 21 days ended. Watch for them, because they will arrive wearing ordinary clothes. They will look like coincidence. They will look like luck or good timing. But you will know, in the part of you that has been waiting, that has been holding on, that kept the candle lit through every dark night, you will know. And I want to tell you something about the people who will arrive in this season, because the provision is not only financial, the provision is also relational. God does not just send resources. He sends people who carry resources, people who carry doors, people who carry keys, people who were placed in positions years before you needed them for the specific purpose of what they are about to do in your life. They are not strangers in the way you think of strangers. They have been connected to you in the spirit long before they will be connected to you in the natural. And when you meet them, and some of you will meet one of these people within the next weeks and months, you will not feel like you are meeting someone new. You will feel like you are encountering someone who was supposed to be there, because they were. Heaven does not improvise. The connections being sent to you were not made in response to the current moment. They were made in the foundational phase, while the building was happening underground. Heaven was not just building in you, it was building around you, arranging the people, the circumstances, the timing that would need to be in place for what you are stepping into to be received correctly. This is why some of the relationships that ended had to end, not just to clear space, but because the person in that space was not the one assigned to the next chapter. The person assigned to the next chapter was still being prepared, just as you were being prepared. And when two people who have been through their own preparation find each other, the recognition is immediate. Not because of how it feels on the surface, because of how it feels underneath. A knowing, a peace, a sense that something that was supposed to happen is finally happening. That is the kind of connection being sent. Not another person who needs you to rescue them. Not another dynamic that requires you to shrink. Someone who sees what you carry because they carry the same kind of thing. That encounter is coming. And when it arrives, you will understand something about the waiting that you could not have understood before. That the timing of the connection was as important as the connection itself. If it had arrived earlier, you would not have been who you needed to be to receive it. If it had arrived later, it would have missed the window. It is arriving exactly when it was supposed to. I want to leave you with one final image. When a woman is in labor, there is a specific moment called transition. It is the most intense phase of the entire process. The pain is at its highest. The pressure is greatest. The body is working harder than it has ever worked. And here is what makes transition so difficult. It is the phase right before delivery. The people around a woman in transition sometimes make a mistake. They see how much pain she is in, and they think the worst is still ahead, when in reality, the intensity of transition is the announcement that delivery is close. If you are in transition, and I believe some of you hearing this are the intensity you are feeling right now, is not evidence that the worst is still coming. It is evidence that delivery is near. What has been developing inside of you, the calling, the gifts, the purpose, the assignment is ready to be born, and birth is not quiet, and birth is not comfortable, but birth is the beginning of everything that was promised, of everything that was prepared, of everything that heaven has been holding in trust for you through every year of the waiting. Your season is here, not approaching. Here, say this with me, out loud. Right now, Father, I release the interpretation I placed on the silence. I release the conclusion I drew from the waiting. I release the story I told myself about what the delay meant. I receive the truth instead, that the silence was not abandonment. It was architecture, that the waiting was not punishment. It was preparation, that the opposition I faced was not evidence of curse. It was evidence of calling. I declare that the foundation is complete. I declare that the delivery is near. I declare that what was built in the hidden season is ready to become visible in this season. I receive the suddenness. I receive the provision from unexpected directions. I receive the connections that only God could have placed. I receive the doors that open without my forcing. I am not behind. I am not forgotten. I am not the exception to the promise. I am the one the foundation was built for, and I am ready for what was always coming. In Jesus' name, amen, chosen one. Before you go, if this message found you at the right moment, if something in what I described tonight named what you have been living through in ways that you could not find language for before, leave a comment with the words, I am ready, not as a performance. As a declaration, a written record of the moment you received what heaven has been building toward. Subscribe, because what was spoken tonight is a beginning. The next word builds on what was just established here. The foundation message leads to the building message. Do not miss what comes next. And share this with the person who came to your mind while you were listening. You know who it is. They are in the middle of the silent season. They are at the 20-day mark, and they do not know that the answer was heard on day one. Send this to them. Be the angel that delivers the word they have been waiting for. Go now, chosen one. Go with the understanding that changes everything. The silence was never indifference. It was the sound of a foundation being built deep enough to hold what is coming. The waiting was never abandonment. It was the Father watching the direction you were walking from and moving toward you. The opposition was never evidence of curse. It was the enemy's honest assessment of how significant your assignment is, and you are still here. The candle is still lit. That alone is enough to tell you everything you need to know about what is still possible. You were never forgotten. You are not forgotten now. The building is almost complete. And what rises from a foundation this deep does not shake when everything around it shakes. It stands like you have stood, and it will still be standing long after everything that tried to stop it has been forgotten. Go in peace. Go in the full knowledge of what the silence was, and receive what the silence was building for you. Amen.